Qidi Tech have just released this, their new mid-size 3D printer called the Q1 Pro. As you can see, it is a fully enclosed 3D printer. It is about the same size and print volume as the likes of the Bambu Lab P1S, and in fact, it is directly designed to compete with the Bambu Lab series as well as the Creality K series. Today, I'm going to be giving you an overview of this 3D printer, having spent some time with it, talk about its features and capabilities, and then at the very end, I'm going to share with you my thoughts. Now, just to be crystal clear up front, Qidi Tech did send me this 3D printer over to review. They have not paid me to make this video, they have not seen it before it's been published, and as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. However, I have received this printer for free. I don't know if I get to keep it, I didn't ask. I'm going to make the assumption I do, and I want to be crystal clear with you up front what the situation is. And whilst I will say to you that has no influence on my opinions whatsoever, because I've received printers from many manufacturers, I do want to make sure you fully understand what the situation is. Anyway, let's get on with it and let's take a look at the Q1 Pro in a bit more detail. The Q1 Pro is a fully enclosed Klipper-based 3D printer with a build volume of 245 by 245 by 245. It is based on Klipper and is capable of print speeds up to 600 millimeters a second, as well as accelerations up to 2000 millimeters a second, and is in line with the printers such as the Bambu Lab P1S and the K1 series from Creality. It has a hot end capable of up to 350 degrees C, and it is fitted with a bi-metal nozzle, and it has a print bed maximum temperature of 120 degrees C. It has an auxiliary exhaust fan on the side, as well as a built-in chamber heater fan, allowing you to heat the cavity up to 60 degrees C for much better stability when printing filaments such as ABS. The print bed features a removable dual-sided PEI sheet which is held in place with a magnetic pad. That is coupled to dual Z-axis which have independent motors. You have two rods on each side with their own individual stepper. Now, as this is a CoreXY 3D printer, it does have the same setup as the K1 as well as the P series from Bambu Lab. We have dual hollow rods at the top on the gantry coupled to dual stepper motors, one on each side. Now, as this is a Klipper-based printer, not only does that mean it's fully open source, but it has all of the features you'd come to expect. So, we have full auto calibration, full input shaping, it has auto bed level as well as auto Z adjustment, and in fact, Qidi say there are two sensors used for this. There's a magnetic style pinder sensor on the side of the hot end, and this is used to give the best possible bed level calibration. We also have a filament runout sensor, and there's also a filament tangle sensor as well at the back, and Qidi say that this will pick up issues on the filament spool, allowing it to pause the print and you resolve it before a failure. On the front, you'll find a 4.5-inch touchscreen that allows you to control the printer's software. It has built-in Wi-Fi 6 for wireless printing and a USB port mounted on the back corner as well for uploading your prints manually. This all runs on a built-in 64-bit processor, and it has a built-in 32GB eMMC storage module as well. One other feature that is great to see is the fact that it has a built-in 1080p camera as well, allowing you to monitor prints remotely via the Qidi app or even download time-lapse footage of your prints. Now, whilst this isn't a multi-material printer, it does also have a purge and wipe feature. For instance, on the back wall, you'll find a little bin designed to catch the filament, and there's this plastic arm mechanism that the print head hits, and it pushes out a felt pad and wiper under the hot end to try and remove any excess filament that has managed to stick in place. Now, before we move on to talking about the Q1's print performance, I want to talk about its fit and finish as well as some of the accessories. Qidi do love molded plastics, and predominantly this shell is made of that. However, unlike their previous models, whilst it's externally plastic, they've added a metal structure to the inside of this printer now, like a frame that everything sits on, similar to what Bambu do on their printers, and that's going to offer a lot more stability compared to previous models. We have molded plastic outside shells. We have this clear perspex door. It's made of this sort of transparent plastic material. I'm not exactly sure what plastic it is. It's not the kind that's going to break easily. However, there are a few odd things about this door. For instance, whilst it does have an area for the handle, there's no actual handle on it. There's flat surfaces, and it just feels like there should be an area for your fingers to go into. It's not that the door is particularly difficult to open, because it isn't. You can reach down and open it here, you can reach onto it there, but you're putting your fingers on a flat surface. It just feels like this area here should actually go in, so you've got somewhere to grab. But if you did want to open it from the top, you can simply do it there as well. The door is held closed with these little magnets, and actually I prefer this kind of door to the glass ones that we have on some of the other printers, because you got far less chance of breaking this. The lid is made of the same material, the same clear plastic, that just unclips out the top. It's a bit better fit on this compared to the X Max 3. It slots in place nicely. So regardless, if you're printing your PLAs, you can open your door and remove the lid, or if you're printing your ABSs or your temperature sensitive filaments, you can close everything up. Personally, I've not really removed the lid on this when in use. For my PLAs, I simply opened the door and it was absolutely fine. Everything else externally, as I've said, is moulded plastics, and there's a lot of moulding inside as well. And overall, whilst it's not the highest quality in the world, it does have a more industrial feel to it. It's not some of the sort of perfect pristine plastics that you might find on the Bambu. It's more of a sort of industrial style plastics and finish on the side. When you get the light on it, you can see some imperfections, but at the end of the day, it's a tool and it's nothing that distracts from the product. Where things do go downhill is the filament holder. Now this is hanging off the side here. Let me just move it so you can see it. This is terrible, and frankly, I don't recommend you use this. It clips into the back of the printer and it sticks out at the side, making access to it quite easy. But you can see there, I've got a full spool of ABS on there, and it just moves around. I haven't had this fall off, but I can absolutely see it happening, and I would personally recommend getting yourself an external spool holder. What they did with the X Max 3 is they actually gave you a spool holder that would clip on the back, or you could sit down next to the printer. I suspect we will see better prints for this come out. It's not a terrible idea the way they've done it, it's just the implementation isn't very good. There is far too much movement on that. There's not enough of a lip here. What you could do though is print yourself a washer to go on there, because this little piece does unclip. So what you could do is print a washer to go on here and to go on there, just to make that sizing a lot bigger to prevent your spool falling off. That I think is probably an absolute must, and if I get a chance, I might knock something together before this video goes live, and I'll mention it in the comment section if I do. Now, largely the reason for this is the bracket itself. It's made of plastic, but it's completely hollowed out on the back. If I just show you it here, it just twists back and forth very, very easily. You've then got this piece here that clips in. That's okay. A bit of glue on that would make it solid. And then you've got this sort of lock that goes over the side, and you've got that little ring there that's designed to hold the spool. You could 3D print yourself up something new for this. It wouldn't be particularly difficult. I suspect we'll see an improved design. If this was solid, I think it would be a bit better, and then it just needs a washer on the end there just to give it a bit of additional support. Other than that, fit and finish wise, there really isn't anything to complain about. Next, I'm going to give you a bit of a walkthrough of the UI on the printer itself and talk about some things there, and then we'll come back and take a look at the slicer as well as how the Wi-Fi connectivity works. Looking at the home screen, you can see here everything is fairly logical. Along the bottom, you've got your menu options, you've then got your temperatures down here, and then the last print or the print status up here. We've then got the light button that allows us to turn on and off the LED bar. You've got a sound button to turn on and off notifications, and then you've got an emergency stop button as well. To click on any of these options here, you can actually then go in and change the settings. You can manually set the print nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, as well as the cavity temperature as well. Remember, I said earlier, this printer does have a built-in heater for the cavity. So if we tap on that, we can actually set that to on. We can then set the temperature on that manually as well if we wanted to. Click OK on that, and it's then turned off. As I mentioned earlier, there are some quirks with the firmware on this printer, and one of these is the replace filament option. Now, I've not used this on this printer because, in my opinion, it's broke. If we take a look at it, if you click on it, it first of all asks you to set the temperature, which is okay. And what you'll then notice is that it recommends that you actually remove the PTFE tube out the top of the extruder, cut the filament, and what it will then do is simply extrude out what filament is left rather than doing a normal change like you would do on most printers. Now, personally, I think that's silly. The way the actual PTFE tube is held into the top of the extruder really doesn't make this ideal. In fact, I haven't done it, but I believe to get it out, you can actually end up damaging it. What I've been doing instead is manually setting the temperature on the hot end to say 200 degrees. Once temperature is reached, I've then been setting this to 100 mil, then backing out the filament and pulling it out the end of the PTFE tube on the back myself. If you click on the little fan icon here, you can then see the manual controls for the fan. So we got our cooling fan, our auxiliary cooling fan, as well as our chamber circulation fan there as well. Not only do you have that heating element in the bottom corner, you also have a chamber circulation fan as well to be able to regulate the chamber by expelling over temperature air. Moving over to the manual screen, this has the options for moving all of the axes. So you can home, you can move your X, your Y and your Z, and you can choose by how much you wish to do that here on the left. Next, moving over to the file storage. Now, this is where you will find the pre-installed STL files that come with the printer, as well as the files that you have uploaded wirelessly from the Qidi slicer. You then also have at the top the option for the USB port at the top too. Finally, moving over to the settings screen. Now under here, you will find your main options for your auto bed level, your input shaping, as well as your platform calibration. Now, the platform calibration is a bit interesting. This seems to be a manual override calibration for the built-in auto bed level. I actually ran that when I first got this printer, but I don't think you need to do it. The only calibrations you should need to do when you get this printer is auto bed level and input shaping. I'm not exactly sure why this is here. I think it's something historic based on the Qidi software. I'm going to wait for an answer from that, and again, I'll put that in the description as well once I receive it. Then finally moving over to the settings, and under here you have your option for your languages, your network settings where you can connect to your Wi-Fi network. You can see that listed there. You can go down to your system settings, tells you what's going on with the system on notifications. You've got after sales support information, automatic sleep option, updating the firmware, and factory reset option. Now, with regards to actually getting your prints on the printer, it's really straightforward. Qidi now have their own slicer with built-in Wi-Fi functionality. This is based on Prusa Slicer. It has all of the usual features you'd expect to find in Prusa Slicer, but it now has the wireless stuff as well. So for instance, once you've got your model and you're happy with it, you can simply slice it. You can choose to export it at the bottom via USB, but you can also use the wireless functionality as well. You can choose to just upload it to the printer and manually start it later, or upload and start the print. And it has all of the profiles for this printer pre-installed ready to go. Along the top, you'll also find the devices screen, and this allows us to get to Fluid, that built-in UI that comes with Klipper. You can see here that we have our webcam viewable on the right-hand side, and you have all of the usual options that are available in Fluid here via this app, but you can also get to that via your browser as well if you wanted to. Qidi also have an app available for this printer as well. Now, at the point of me recording this video, only the Android version is available. The iOS version is still in development, or at least waiting to get published onto the Apple Store. Next, we're going to talk about the print results and the quality and how this printer actually performs in real-world use. Now, I've tested this in things such as PLA, ABSs, some carbon fibers, but I've also tested it in TPU as well. And whilst things in the solid filaments are absolutely fine, there are very mixed results when it comes to the flexibles, and we'll talk about that as we move through the next bit. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is a full bed print. Now, overall, this has come out extremely well. There's not really any signs of high spots. The bed level is doing a good job. It did split in one area when I lifted it off the bed, and in fact it's split a bit more since. It's been moved around a bit in the workshop before me actually filming this bit. What you can see is it hasn't quite squeezed in enough on this side here. It's probably a little high on this side, but overall I have to say it is one of the cleanest full bed prints that I've had from a printer. It is right up there with the likes of the Bambu Lab P1S or even the X1 in this regard, and their bed level system definitely seems to be doing a good job. Moving over to the quality of the prints, I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm going to give you more opinion here. I have to say, these are both PLAs. This printer can produce some absolutely fantastic results in PLA and ABS. In fact, I will honestly say it is right up there with the best of them. I've been blown away just how good the print quality is in standard filaments. It is something that Qidi have done a great job on. The overhang performance is really good on this. It's tighter on this than it is on the likes of the K1 series with regards to the extreme overhangs. And this make a test print has come out really, really well. It's hard for me to show you this under this light. What I will say is I have no complaints with regards to this printer's performance in PLA or ABS. Really, the benchies come out really tidy as well, really clean. The only thing I will say is you do have this slight strange notching up here on their pre-sliced file. This isn't one I sliced, this is their pre-sliced one. The bow area has come out really clean. It's hard to show you on this white filament, but it does look really good. The only thing I did notice is on the tops of the circles there, look, it does seem like that they've done something with regards to the slicing and it's left out that little notch. I also have done a test print on a clearance unit, and this is just to give us an idea of what the clearances are like. Let me just spin it round. Overall, it's come out that it's just the 0.10 that's tight, 0.15, this is printed at 0.2, 0.20, 0.25, all of these are loose. The 0.15 is a little tight, but it does move. The 0.10 is the one that's tight. But again, I'm really pleased with how it's come out. That one actually will fall out. That's how much movement there is on that one. And actually, it's nice to show you that. If I take it out, you can just see what it's done on that print. It's really quite clean and tidy. The bottom layer, again, is really good. That's the same on the bottom of the benchy too. There's also a number of other prints that I've done. I've done my typical rows. I have to say there's not really many complaints with regards to ringing. There is a slight view of seam down there on this print, and the first layer did have this slightly strange line around it at the bottom. Not something I've seen on the others, but the overall quality of the rows, again, is very good, right up there with the other printers. Now, I have been testing this on some of the other difficult filaments. So we've got ABS parts here. These are actually Voron printed parts. These were done in the chamber with it closed. You can see there that they've actually come out really quite nice. The heated chamber does make a big difference on this printer with regards to trying to prevent warping. I did still get some on this one here. This one didn't stick to the bed. This one absolutely did. It held down very nicely, although it did warp a touch there in the corner. This one warped quite a lot, but I think that was down to me rather than the actual printer. At the end of the day, a heated cavity is not the magic catch-all answer to prevent warping. It's a way of trying to reduce it, but again, at the end of the day, it is going to be filament dependent. What I will say though is with regards to printing ABS, the printer is absolutely more than capable. Where things go downhill a little bit, though, is TPU. Now, I'm showing you cubes here, and the reason for that is I have not been able to get a successful flexible TPU print from the printer that I've been sent. And now, I have spent quite a lot of time looking into this. I've stripped down the extruder. I've done a lot of testing, and it just will not print consistently for me on TPU. This is an early test cube just to show you. This very much looks like a blockage, a restriction. What I can tell you is I don't have a restriction in the hot end. This is something to do with the way the printer is feeding the TPU. In fact, you can even see it and hear it when loading. When you're trying to load the filament, it actually squeaks, and you can see that it's just not extruding well out the hot end at all. Looking here, you can see on this test cube, again, it's come out a little bit better, but it's certainly not perfect. Depending on the way the wind is blowing, though, you can get it to print something like this here. This is another TPU one, which actually doesn't look half bad, but you can see, again, we're getting extrusion issues there in the middle. Same on this one here, same on this one here. Now, I've spent a crazy amount of time looking into this, and I have come to the conclusion that there's an issue with the extruder setup on my pre-release unit. I don't believe this is unique to me. I believe a number of the people who had review units have also had problems as well. Looking at the extruder, I think the spring tension is far too high for TPU, but the filament output path has too large a bore as well, causing it to bind up and restrict the flow. Now, whilst I am having issues, what I can say is this. There are people who have bought their Q1 Pros after release. I held back my review because of these problems, and they are able to print TPU without a problem. For instance, a user called Schnid, I think that's how I pronounce it, who's on one of the Qidi Discord servers that I am on, and he's been posting images as I've been talking about the issues I've been having. He's posted this Benchy printed in TPU here, which has come out fine, no issues at all. He's also posted some other stuff as well. So if I scroll down, he's actually posted some demonstration prints of it, and his retail unit is working absolutely fine. No problems at all with different brands of filament as well. I have actually tested mine with Overture as well as SaintSmart, and it is exactly the same. And all I can say at this moment in time is that Qidi may have made a change in production between the point of sending them out to us, people like me, to review, and the retail units to customers, but I can only share with you my findings. I personally believe my unit has a problem with the extruder. I think the tension spring is way too hard for TPU filaments, but also the filament exit path after the drive rollers is a little bit oversized as well, and this is causing TPU to bind up in the extruder. In fact, you can even hear this on mine whilst loading TPU. It starts to squeak, and it's just not feeding that TPU out of the hot end as it should be. Now, before I move over to my final thoughts, there is one last thing that I need to highlight, which is quite important. Now, this was first found by Vector 3D, who did a teardown of this printer live on his channel, and it is regarding that built-in cavity heater. On previous Qidi models, that heater ran off 24 volts, which meant it was electrically safe. It had a separate power supply for powering the heater, which did take up space in the base, but because it was such a large printer, that really wasn't an issue. In this printer, though, that heater is not 24 volts, it is mains voltage. And actually, instead of having a second power supply, it simply runs directly off either the 110 or 240 volts where you live. The concern around this is the fact that the main elements of that heater are live mains voltage when turned on. Now, the heater does have a plastic shroud that goes over the front that stops you being able to put your finger in and touch it. However, that wouldn't stop you putting a screwdriver in, and whilst it does appear to offer protection from the bed being able to go in there when removing and replacing the sheet, it is a single point of failure that could lead to issues. Now, most of us understand that touching anything mains electrical is going to end badly. However, the issue here is twofold. Number one, most people would not expect that heater to be actually mains voltage, and number two, the cover is a single point of failure. Whilst it may prevent the bed touching the metal elements, it doesn't mean that in the event of something hitting it, it couldn't break and expose those metal contacts to a person. With the double isolation rules in the UK would mean that something like this should actually be protected to prevent a single point of failure, but that unfortunately isn't what we've got here. Now, Mandic really have released a 3D printed cover that you can print to put over this heater to offer additional protection. There are also a number of other third-party ones turning up on the internet as well, and I do believe Qidi have also released their own one, although I wasn't able to find the file for this video. However, this is something that I do feel needs to be raised. It isn't dangerous in the sense of, as it is there today, it is fine, it is covered, it is protected, but that cover is not adequate for what the heater actually is, being mains voltage, and there needs to be additional protection in place to ensure that in the event of that cover getting damaged, it isn't exposing live contacts. Okay, so to share with you my final thoughts on the Q1 Pro from Qidi. Overall, I think it's a very good printer, but it is far from perfect. With regards to the fit and finishing externally, it's good. I like the plastics, although there are some annoyances here. The filament holder is completely useless, as I've said already, and I do think there should have been a handle on this door here, but I do like the menu system. I like the size of the screen, and overall, if you're looking for a fully enclosed printer, I don't really see too many complaints here. With regards to the print quality, it is very good in standard filaments. When I mean standard, PLAs, ABSs, and non-flexibles. In fact, it is right up there with the Bambu Lab printers in that regard. It is one of the best FDM printers with regards to quality that I've used. The new bed level system with those dual sensors works really well too. And I like the fact that Qidi have been able to improve their printers over time. It's a big improvement over what we saw with the likes of the X Max III. Sadly though, in my unit, flexibles is a no-go. I don't know, as I've said already, if they have fixed this in production, but with regards to flexibles, I simply cannot recommend this printer today because I simply cannot get it to work properly. There are also, though, a number of quirks around this printer in use. So, for instance, the menu system is good, although there are some sort of dead ends that you end up going down in the software, and you have to be careful. I think Qidi need to improve the software on it a little bit, just to sort of take away bits that don't seem to be needed. There's confusion over the bed level system because it sort of has two options for that. You've got a manual bed level and an automatic. I don't see why the manual one is there. And I'll also say in use, there is a bit of a quirk with regards to the bed on this printer. Whilst it is magnetic and removable, it's quite hard to get right when you push it back in. There isn't like pegs to align it. It sits on the full bed area and it's quite easy to get it wrong. So you do need to pay a bit of attention to make sure that the bed does go in the correct place before you start a print. With regards to the webcam feature, really good. Pleased to see that, and I like the improvements that they've made with the slicer as well. From a using this printer point of view, there's nothing here particularly terrible. There's just some quirks around the Qidi software and putting that bed back in place. One thing I will also add is I do wonder about that filament cleaning mechanism at the back. Does seem quite loose and flexible, although it has worked absolutely fine in my testing so far. For me, the only other things to mention here is, as I've said already, that flexibles printing, and there's that situation with the heater as well at the back. As I've said, I believe it should have a better cover, though that isn't something I would say you shouldn't buy this printer over. You can download a replacement that goes over the top that offers additional protection, and if you buy this, that is one of the first things you should absolutely do. And in fact, Qidi need to change that and start adding that additional cover from the factory. Now, price-wise, this printer is available right now for $469 in the US, or just under £400 in the UK, and they are being very aggressive with the pricing on this compared to other models on the market. For that price, you are getting an awful lot of 3D printer, and whilst it isn't perfect, it is a printer that is going to give you some good results, apart from on those flexibles. As I've said, you do have that heater thing, but that isn't something that should stop you buying it. But if you do, just make sure that you do print that cover. If you are interested in getting this printer, there will be a link to it in the description. As for, do I think you should buy this over the others? It's a hard one for me. You are getting a lot of good printers in this price band right now. But what I will say is this: Qidi are a company that do listen, they do respond, and they are definitely delivering printers slightly outside the norm. And if you're interested in something like this, please do consider checking them out. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. I'm really interested in knowing what you think. As I said earlier, I want to say a big thank you to Qidi for sending this one over. I will be making more content on this printer in the future, and if you'd like to see that, please do make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Finally, if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content like this in the future, please also check out the link to my Patreon. We would not be able to keep making content on this channel without their support, and if you'd like to support us in the future, please do consider checking out that link. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.